Good morning. I'm attorney Kati Dean with the law firm of Locke & Quinn. Welcome to Raising the Bar, Greater Richmond's Law Talk radio show. This show brings an exciting and varied array of legal topics to listeners throughout Central Virginia, and especially in the Greater Richmond area. On Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m., this show features true life stories and cases, legal tips, and information from experts and attorneys. The law touches nearly every aspect of daily life, and this show brings both humorous and entertaining stories along with helpful tips, including tips on access to legal services, something that not everyone can afford. As a reminder, you can watch a Facebook Live video of today's show by going to the Locke & Quinn page on Facebook. Later on, you can also visit our website, www.lockequinn.com, in order to download videos and podcasts of all of our episodes. Today, we're discussing some of the laws and programs that protect the rights of people with disabilities. I'm joined by Robert Gray, who is the Director of Compliance and Quality Assurance, and Julie Triplett, Senior Disability Rights Advocate, both from the Disability Law Center of Virginia. Good morning, Robert and Julie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Katie.
And I'm very excited to be talking with both of them, especially since the Disability Law Center is where I began my career when I was just starting out as an attorney. And as a reminder, if you have any questions during the show, you can call in at 804-454-1366. So let's get started. Robert, just to give everyone some background, what exactly is the Disability Law Center of Virginia?
Sure, Katie. The Disability Law Center of Virginia is the Commonwealth's designated protection and advocacy agency. We advocate for the rights of Virginians with disabilities all across the Commonwealth through individual and systemic cases and projects. Now, every state has an agency similar to DLCV and that provides these protection and advocacy services. And DLCV is a nonprofit agency. And in most cases, we're able to provide these services free of charge to the public. Now, our mission is to advance independence, choice, and self-determination. We want to protect legal, human, and civil rights, eliminate abuse, neglect, and discrimination, and we do this through zealous and uncompromising legal advocacy and representation. Our vision is a Commonwealth that is free of legal barriers for individuals with disabilities.
Awesome. So now the name of the organization is the Disability Law Center, but of course not everyone who works there is an attorney, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you explain some of the other types of roles at DLCV?
Sure. Our attorneys are obviously very important to the agency as they manage our litigation, but our attorneys are only about a third of our staff. In addition to our attorneys, we have advocates who operate under the supervision of attorneys and then negotiate and resolve issues before they really end up in a legal proceeding. The advocates, they make up about another third of our staff, and the final third is our operational support unit. This is a critical unit, and they manage all of our administrative and financial operations to make sure we make everything work. Everyone at DLCV, Katie, is an advocate, however. All of us are constantly out on the road. We're surveying, we're monitoring, we're providing education to the community.
Because you guys cover the whole state of Virginia, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
So not just the Richmond area, even though that's where you're located.
Last year we provided direct assistance to about 2,500 people. We had 2,000 of those received information and referral, and then 500 received direct case services.
Wow. That's a lot of good work. So what exactly is your job within the Disability Law Center?
Sure. I manage all of our quality assurance functions at the office. So this includes like your program compliance and completion of annual reports for our federal grants, which really make up the core of our funding, receipt of our client and public feedback we receive through input processes, and then management of our on-duty process. I also, my second job is I manage the Resource and Vocational Access Unit. We call ourselves the RVA, and the unit manages all of our vocational rehabilitation advocacy and assistance for beneficiaries of Social Security who might be facing barriers related to work or maintaining employment.
Wow, so it sounds like you're keeping busy.
I try.
And Julie, what is your job at the Disability Law Center?
Well, good morning again, Katie. My job is I'm a senior disability rights advocate with the Law Center, and I spend most of my time working with individuals with various types of disabilities who face barriers to employment, accessing the services and supports they need to be employed successfully. Another part of my job is that I get to do a lot of presentations about the Disability Law Center of Virginia and the services we offer and the programs and things that we do.
Sounds like you're keeping pretty busy as well.
Yes.
So how long have you both been working in this field?
Well, I'll start. I've been in the disability field for 20 years, part of which was in another state and in the state of Arkansas. So give a shout out to Arkansas. And then I've spent the last 12 years at the Disability Law Center.
Wow. And Robert, how about you?
Yeah, from my end, I've been in the disability services field for 15 years. And I was with DLCV and its predecessor, as was Julie, the Virginia Office for Protection and Advocacy.
Correct. Yes.
For nearly 11 years here at the agency. Now, the difference between us now and us then is in October 2013, our agency transitioned from a state agency into a nonprofit. And this is pretty common in the protection and advocacy world. Most protection and advocacy agencies all across the U.S. are nonprofits now, just a handful within the state. And the reason for this is that we became a nonprofit is we wanted the ability to actually take on issues with the Commonwealth, with agencies like the Department for Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. And when you have two state agencies in the legal world who are trying to take on each other, sometimes that can create a conflict.
Right.
So we took everything straight up to the Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court, and were able to challenge and win the ability to take on and sue the other state agencies. However, shortly after that, we transitioned and became a nonprofit.
Got it. And because you guys act as oversight for some of these state, programs and agencies, so I can see, where both being state agencies would create that conflict, or at least the illusion of, the state suing the state.
Absolutely,
For something. So, what inspired both of you to get involved with this line of work? You've both been involved with it for quite some time. So,
okay. Well, for me, it was not really an inspiration to get involved. It was more about that I wanted to make a difference. But I'm inspired every day that I do my job. The job that I had before this one, I had the opportunity to assist individuals to attain medications through medication assistant programs that they didn't have insurance. And so they had to access the medications through particular programs. And so I helped them to do that. But for this job, was what inspires me to stay with it is that we get to assist people to achieve their independence and to help them to access the services and supports that they need to be as maximized in their daily life as possible. So that's what inspires me to stay with it.
Yeah, and for me, Katie, many years ago I was a teacher, and I watched children with disabilities just walk into my classroom, and honestly, across the school, they just failed to succeed in different areas. And the reason why there were obstacles there wasn't their fault. These were obstacles that were out of their control. They needed things like technology. They needed a copy of a test in an alternate format. They needed something else to help them be successful. And for whatever reason, they just weren't receiving it. So I thought, why is this a problem? And so I kind of jumped into this field. And when I came to work for DLCV and our predecessor, VOPA, I realized that, oh, wait a minute, it's not just the kids. Adults have these same problems. Sometimes these problems are just so systemic and all over the place. How are we going to tackle this? So I just kind of stood up and said, I need to stand on the front line and do what I can to help.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I know you said earlier on DLCV is a nonprofit. So if people qualify for your services, they are a legal center, but they're free of charge. Is that correct?
That's correct. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. So Robert is the Director for Compliance and Quality Assurance. You probably have a pretty good grasp on all the different types of cases and projects that DLCV handles, and you've talked a little bit about some of them already, but can you explain some of the main areas of the law that DLCV focuses on?
Absolutely. We operate every year under a real specific list of goals and focus areas, and we kind of use that as a skeleton, Katie, that we then build our body of work on and create a work plan from. So what I'll do is, we're doing this with a staff of 30. Right. So obviously there are literally thousands of issues we could take on every year, but we have to choose the areas we feel we can be most effective in that year. This year, we're focusing on preventing abuse and neglect in community settings and in institutions. your mental health hospitals, your training centers that serve individuals with developmental disabilities.
Okay.
And then we're also working with individuals who are facing barriers on education issues, things like assistive technology, and then maybe they're facing suspension, seclusion, and restraint in the school, helping with those issues. Now, when it comes to another area we focus on is the denial of government services.
Okay.
So you're talking about people like facing barriers to vote or access to transportation. You might be access to government services, like getting into a post office or social security building. We focus also on an integrated environment this year. So we're looking to make sure people are discharged in a timely fashion from a facility.
Okay.
And that they have the right to make their individual choice and have access to public accommodations. And that's very important because sometimes they might want to get into a grocery store or a restaurant, but there might be a barrier to get inside. We also ensure that people are employed to their maximum potential. And that kind of goes into the work that Julie and I, and a little bit of a shout out to our other RVA advocates, Shalisha and Joe LaFon, who are also in our unit. And we make sure that people are employed to their maximum potential and have access to the quality services from vocational rehabilitation providers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I know this is a mouthful, but there's one more focus area we work on, and that is certain healthcare access issues. So we're talking about things related to Medicaid, waiver, accommodations like interpreters.
Okay.
And access to public transportation routes to medical offices. So that's a big chunk.
Yes. And that's the limited, the scaled down skeleton version.
Yeah.
Like.
And so now like the bad news to that, unfortunately, which is we can't take on every issue that comes our way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just have certain areas we aren't able to help in at all. And those areas are things like family law,
Right.
Divorce, custody support. We aren't able to help with assisted suicide, drafting wills, trusts, or estate planning. Criminal law, bankruptcy, tax issues, pensions, and then property disputes. There, as I'm sure you're very well aware, there are other firms and resources available to help people, like legal aid and then private firms.
Right. And so do you guys, when people call in with some of those issues, are you able to sort of direct them or, at least try to direct them in the right direction if you guys aren't able to help them?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Everyone who calls us receives service.
Mm-hmm.
Now that service might take a lot of research for us to go and figure out what information and referral they need, where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to dig and we're going to help find the resources that each person needs if we can't directly assist ourselves.
Right. So if you guys aren't opening the case, you're still trying to give them some sort of help and point them in the right direction and
Exactly.
give help to everyone who calls. Wow, that's great. And it sounds like you guys even, like you said, you sort of limit the areas you cover, but you still really cover a lot. And I think when most people think of the laws that protect people with disabilities, they may only be familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act or what we call the ADA. And just some background for those who may not be familiar, the ADA is a federal law passed in 1990 that prohibits discrimination and ensures equal opportunity for people with disabilities in employment, state and local government services, public accommodations, commercial facilities, and transportation. So for example, you go out in public, you notice an accessible parking spot or a curb cut or maybe an elevator or a ramp. Those are all examples of the ADA working to make sure that people with disabilities have equal access to public places. And those are, I think, the ones that people are most familiar with. But of course, there are a lot of other types of accommodations required under the ADA that people might be less familiar with. Is that right?
So true, Katie. So true. So the Americans with Disabilities Act has various titles. And that provide protection for employment discrimination.
Right.
What you just said, the access to government, local government and public buildings, access to telecommunication, and the list kind of goes on and on and on. But what's very interesting about the ADA is, just recently, there 2010, the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines were updated. And so what you have is this body of work from the early 90s that said, you have to be accessible.
Right.
And that's changed now, specifically regarding a lot of businesses like medical offices, for example. There are new standards with these 2010 changes that make medical offices have to provide a greater number of accessible parking spaces. There are new changes that make recreational facilities have to make their pools accessible.
Wow.
So some of your listeners might notice, if they've been recently to a local gym or recreational facility, that there are now lifts that get people into pools, and that there are ramps that lead into the pools if there's not a lift.
Yeah.
And these are direct results of those changes. Now, you'll notice I said local and state government buildings for the ADA, because we have that little barrier that the federal government did when they wrote the ADA, and that is to not protect individuals under the ADA from barriers to federal government programs and services. So there's this interesting law that's known as the Architectural Barriers Act. And oddly enough, it was actually written in 1963, before the ADA.
Long before the ADA.
Long before the ADA. And that law was actually designed to make sure that facilities that were designed, built, or altered or leased with federal funds, and I apologize, it was in 1968, not 1963, were accessible for people with disabilities who were trying to access federal buildings, like the post offices and the Social Security buildings I mentioned earlier.
Right.
There's the United States Access Board that kind of has oversight. Well, one of the interesting things DLCV is doing this year is we're taking a close look at these federal buildings and seeing if we can use the United States Access Board to help us to resolve barriers that folks are having with those federal facilities as well. So we're kind of able to tackle things globally. And, we never want to think that just because a person has a problem at a post office, that they should not be able to complain about it, just like they would complain if they had a problem trying to get into a grocery store.
Right.
Under the ADA, though, we've tackled a lot of different cases over the years. You might notice just down the street here as I was driving here today, there are a couple of shopping plazas I know very well in my former life as an advocate that we help to make accessible. And, we fix things like entrances to the building. We fix things like restrooms to make sure that there were grab bars. We'd make sure that anyone could go inside and use these public accommodations.
Yeah, and that's so important. I remember when I began my career at DLCV as an intern, actually, one of the big intern projects that we always did is they would send all the interns out and we would just go to places, we would count parking spaces, we would, measure ramps,
Right.
Just do stuff like that. But it's so important because, it's getting people in the door of, these public places is such a big piece of things.
Exactly.
So any other, cases that you guys have going on or anything you're...
Yeah. Luckily we're able to open the door to a limited number of cases every year, but you might find this year we're having a specific concentration on barriers to fixed route transportation to reach medical buildings. And we've actually, we're lucky enough to receive a grant from the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities to really take a close look at several cities across the Commonwealth. One of them is the city of Richmond. So if we have any listeners today in that area, we're looking at, where does GRTC drop off someone and how are they going to get to the hundreds of medical providers that are just in the city of Richmond. We're also looking at some other areas as well, including Norfolk, Roanoke, and Loudoun County. And, we'd like to think that we could do the whole Commonwealth. We'd love to fix every problem. But, things you might notice with cracks in the sidewalk, problems with a lack of an accessible route, no curb cut to get onto the curb and reach the building. Those are issues we're looking for from where the stop is to drop someone off to then get to the front door of the medical office.
Great. Well, that sounds really awesome. And of course, the ADA and the Architectural Barriers Act, we've been talking a lot about public accommodations and architectural accommodations. But there was also a major United States Supreme Court decision in 1999. It's called the Olmstead decision, which analyzed what we call the integration mandate of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what the Supreme Court essentially said in that case was that the ADA requires public agencies to provide services in the most integrated setting appropriate to the needs of qualified individuals with disabilities. So we've been talking a lot about access, but there's also a big integration piece of this. So how does that decision and the integration mandate impact the work that DLCV does?
It has a major impact, a major impact. You're going to find our advocates and attorneys providing regular monitoring in all of the state-operated mental health hospitals and the training centers. I mentioned those a little earlier. They serve individuals with developmental disabilities, and you'll notice their number is dwindling intentionally, and that is due to a settlement agreement between the United States and Virginia. And that settlement agreement says, you know what? Many states across the United States are already making sure that individuals are in a integrated environment where they can live in the community and not in some type of a facility where they have limited options and that they're independent.
Right.
And so thanks to Olmsted and several other factors, including our access authority, which we can talk about in a minute, you'll find us in these facilities making sure that there aren't instances of abuse and neglect, other rights violations. You'll also find us in juvenile justice facilities and residential facilities that serve children. One of our major purposes during these visits is just to make sure that these patients have a voice and that they don't feel like they're in an environment that is a segregated environment that is not safe for them or even perceived as safe. We investigate a lot of these situations we find through this monitoring. And you'll find individual facilities, sometimes we find trends. And we have a lot of data that we have access authority through some wonderful reporting systems. And we use that data to then say, okay, where's the problem? Let's fix it.
So your access authority, I just want to touch on this briefly. Sure. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that, what that is?
Absolutely. So we have two federal grants, the Protection and Advocacy for Developmental Disabilities grant and the Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Mental Illness grant. And those two grants have this wonderful provision in each of them that allows us to essentially have access to all residential facilities that serve children and adults with disabilities across the Commonwealth. So if we want to go into a group home, Katie, because we feel there's a problem there, they have to let us through the door.
That is really fascinating, and we will talk a little bit more about it when we come back. We're getting ready to take a break here shortly. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can call in at 804-454-1366. You are listening to Raising the Bar, Law Talk radio show, and we will be back shortly.
You've been listening to With SRN News, I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. President Trump calling for merit-based immigration following the truck attack in New York City that killed 8 people and injured 11. That's after learning that the man accused of carrying out the attack was here on a so-called diversity visa. The president is branding what happened yesterday in New York as a cowardly attack. The defense for Bo Bergdahl wraps up its case today at his sentencing hearing. He's already pled guilty to abandoning his post in Afghanistan. On the campus of Cal State Fullerton last night, police arrested 7 people who tried to clamp down on free speech. Protesters attacked those attending a speech by conservative commentator Milo Yiannopoulos. The sign-up season for the Affordable Care Act begins officially today, and they have reduced advertising this year and also have less time to sign up if you're looking to add yourself to the Obamacare exchanges. On Wall Street, the Dow right now up 28 points. This is SRN News.
Amazing to realize, but it's been almost 2 years. I've been talking with you about Relief Factor, and I can tell you I've been continually inundated with testimonials. If you're struggling with ongoing back or neck pain, shoulder, hip, or knee pain, or general muscle pain, pains of any kind, do what tens of thousands of others have done so successfully. Go to relieffactor.com and order their 3-week quick start for just $19.95. 1-800-500-8384. That's 1-800-500-8384.
Spearphishing has or will strike your business, wreaking havoc on your employees, brand, and your bottom line. Spearphishing can't be stopped by traditional email security solutions because messages appear to be legitimate from your boss, a trusted colleague, or a vendor asking you to wire money, confirm login credentials, or worse. Barracuda Sentinel is artificial intelligence for real-time spearphishing and cyber fraud defense. Reclaim your email in minutes with zero impact on network performance. Visit barracuda.com/AI.
Hi, this is Colleen Quinn of Lock & Quinn and Raising the Bar, the Law Talk radio show. Join us on Wednesday, November 1st at 9 a.m. as Kati Dean of Lock & Quinn interviews Robert Gray of the Disability Law Center of Virginia on protecting the rights of persons with disabilities. It'll be a great show.
Raising the Bar, Wednesdays, only WNTW 820 AM and 97.7 FM. The Answer.
Driving back from the shore? Just putting the utensils away from that late summer cookout. Hi, this is Pat Rogers, inviting you to join me on Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. for the Love Doctor Radio Hour. 60 minutes of unqualified opinion, unparalleled nonsense, and your calls. I look forward to sharing a laugh with you on Sundays at 7 p.m. right here on AM 820 and almost 98, 7.7 FM, WNTW.
Now, back to Raising the Bar. Call into the show with your stories and questions at 804-454-1366. 804-454-1366.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Raising the Bar, Richmond's Law Talk radio show. Today, we are discussing some of the laws and programs that protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. And I'm joined by Robert Gray, who's the Director of Compliance and Quality Assurance, and Julie Triplett, Senior Disability Rights Advocate, both with the Disability Law Center of Virginia. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks.
You. All right, so we spent the first half of our program discussing sort of an overview of the work that DLCV does. And from everything that you've said, it's clear that a big part of DLCV's mission is really making sure that folks with disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else to be active and engaged members of the community. Mm-hmm. And I know that specifically part of the work that both of you do at DLCV involves vocational rehabilitation advocacy that you mentioned earlier, and assisting beneficiaries of Social Security with work-related issues. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. So what exactly are vocational rehabilitation services?
Well, thanks, Katie, for asking. Vocational rehabilitation services are services that individuals with disabilities can utilize to help them to get or keep a job.
All right. So who's entitled to receive these services?
Individuals with disabilities throughout the state of Virginia can receive these services if they want to work. And also these are for adults and students. Vocational rehab services can start as early as age 14 to help students get ready for life after high school. When students with disabilities are in school, their primary focus is school. Mm-hmm. And they have to, stay focused on the school. But once they're done with school, the school is done with them. And so vocational rehab services can pick up to assist them to look for and keep jobs. And that's why we say that they can start as early as age 14, because the vocational rehab agency can go in and work with the school to help them to do career assessments, vocational evaluations, situational assessments in the community, and to get what they need to work with the school so that they can, once they're out of school, really focus on that job, getting that job.
Wow, excellent. So,
And then
Sorry.
also, oh,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. I'm not. Also, through the vocational rehab services, there's another aspect of that. If individuals with disabilities that are receiving vocational rehab services have trouble accessing those services or find barriers to those services, they can contact the Client Assistance Program, which is acronym of CAP, C-A-P, and which is run through the Disability Law Center of Virginia.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier, the agencies that provide these services. What are some of the agencies that help to provide voc rehab services to people in Virginia?
The agencies that provide vocational rehab services in Virginia, the one that works with individuals who are blind and vision impaired is the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, which is their acronym. We use a lot of acronyms in the disability community.
I remember.
And the acronym for them is D as in doctor, B as in boy, V as in Virginia, I as in independent. So DBVI.
Okay.
And the one that works with individuals with all other types of disabilities is the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, which their acronym is DARS, D as in doctor, A as in advocate, R as in Robert, and S as in services. So their acronym, they just call themselves DARS.
All right. So can you give us, you've mentioned this this CAP program. I know that there's another one that you operate as well. Can you give a little bit more information on DLCV's CAP program and also the other program that you
Absolutely.
operate?
The CAP and PABS program are the bread and butter of our unit.
Okay.
They're really what we work for. As Julie mentioned, the CAP program is a client assistance program. It was established in 1984 by the U.S. Department of Education, and basically to advise and inform and advocate for individuals with disabilities on all services and benefits under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So what we do is, we routinely negotiate receipt of vocational rehabilitation services.
Okay.
And then, for these clients of the agencies that Julie explained, the DARS and DBVI. And then what we'll do is we typically will provide direct case services for about 100 individuals every year under that CAP program. And we've helped many people over the years. Isn't that right, Julie?
Absolutely. We have. I can give you a little bit of some examples of that.
Yeah.
So we can do things as easily as assisting the client to maybe the individual to get access to a different counselor that they work with. When they go access services from DARS or DBVI, they get what's called a vocational rehab counselor that works with them.
Okay.
And so sometimes they have worked with their counselors for a really long time, and maybe the relationship has just gotten stale, and so we can help them to by contacting individuals within the system. We can help them to access maybe getting a new counselor and help them to get on a fresh start in a road in a new direction with a new counselor. So we can do that. We also go and work with them to, when they're working with their counselor, they have what's called an individualized plan for employment with yet another acronym, an IPE, And so we can also help them to make sure that they're getting the services that are on their IPE to the fullest extent that they need to be maximized for their employment potential. So we do that as well. An example of one of the cases that I've had the privilege of working with in the last couple of years is an individual that we were working with had a pretty severe disability, and where he had to, at the present time, his disability was such that he could not be around people that often because he could get sick. And so, but yet he wanted to finish his degree. He had an associate's degree, and he wanted to get that full bachelor's degree so that when his disability improved, and it was expected to improve, he could get back in the workforce in the computer information technology field, which is what he was trained to do. And so the CAP program through the Disability Law Center of Virginia was able to assist him so that DARS would help him to get education through an online degree,
Okay.
which is, they don't always do that. They much prefer working, students going to public schools in their communities, state schools, and like VCU or UVA or something like that. But because of DLCV and the CAP program's advocacy, we advocated that DARS, because of his situation, assist him to be able to get his degree, finish his degree through an online program.
Okay.
And DARS did that. They allowed that for him. And so once he finished his degree, and when the time comes when his disability has improved to a better place, he'll be able to access services in the community through when he gets his job.
Yeah, because he'll already have that degree. That's great.
Exactly. And, it's a good example of it doesn't matter what agency you are, even Disability Law Center of Virginia, we're all obligated with the important task of accommodating people with disabilities and finding ways to do so that are within the law.
Right.
And we have another program that helps us out, the PABS program,
Okay.
Which is another one of these acronyms. Sorry to the listeners. It stands for Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security.
Okay.
This is a program, I bet you can guess who funds it. It's Social Security Administration. Right. And it was established in 1999 when the Ticket to Work and Work Incentive Improvement Act was enacted.
Okay.
And under this act, in this program, we provide advocacy assistance to beneficiaries of Social Security, and they're trying to secure or regain gainful employment. And we have a lot of unique paths to do that. This is one of our more flexible grants. So, but what we do is we try to find areas to concentrate on.
Okay.
So, like this year, we were talking a little bit earlier about goals and focus areas. This year's areas for our PABS grant include benefit-related issues with housing and transportation that impede employment. And we use our PABS program to help people all the time, just like our CAP program, right, Julie?
Absolutely. Our PAPS program, like Robert said, is a bit more flexible. And so that one of the things that we're going to concentrate on this year is, like Robert said, is to assist with impediments to employment related to housing issues, and maybe people having access to their housing is an impediment to employment. So like physical access to their housing is maybe an impediment to their employment, a barrier to their employment, perhaps is a better word. And some other examples that we have done through our PABS program, again, excuse the acronyms that we use, but another example is we had 3 different individuals contact us, and but they all, they contacted us independently of each other, and they all had an issue, the same issue, and it was related to a college program that they were in Northern Virginia. And they were all clients of the Vocational Rehab Services Agency, DARS. And DARS had decided, for whatever reason, that they were going to have to stop assisting with funding for individuals to attend that particular college program. And but through DLCV's advocacy and helping the clients, we noticed on their plans for employment, I go back to that document, that IPE that I was talking about earlier, on their employment document, the IPE, they all had services listed from that college program. So it was part of their plan to reach their maximum employment potential. So we advocated that because it was already on their plan to access the services from the program till completion, we advocated that DARS provide those services until the students finished their programs. So we not only were able to get that accomplished for the 3 that we were working with, but DARS did that for other students that already had that on their IPE program.
So that sounds like something that started out as a, you know, individual case and kind of became a systemic solution almost.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It was great.
That's
It
awesome.
was wonderful to be a part of that. I loved it. Another example is we had a case that we were working with that the client was a individual who was receiving services from DARS and from the VR agency DARS. And so, but he also had another disability. He had a visual impairment as well. So because he had the visual impairment and the other disability, he could receive services from both agencies. And he was having trouble accessing the services he needed from DBVI. So we worked with DARS to help him to access the services he needs from DBVI. So DARS and DBVI are now both serving this client. So DBVI can offer him some assistive technology solutions and evaluations so that he can get some kind of accommodations for the visual part of his disability when he's in the workplace.
So it sounds like a lot of what you guys are doing is just kind of making sure these agencies do what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And you'll notice this running theme of working with systemic issues.
Right.
You know, we try when we can to take on these cases, but in many cases, you know, what we have to do is we have to decide where to spend our resources. And taking on things systemically, a lot of times, you know, gives us, you know, a bigger impact on the populations that we serve. So you'll notice individual victories, systemic victories, but with these agencies too, Katie, we can take both of these agencies to administrative processes.
Okay.
There is a mediation and a fair hearing process offered by both DARS and DBVI, and DLCV will represent. Last year, in fiscal year 17, we represented an individual who was on the other end of Julie's situation with her Northern Virginia college case, another individual who had just graduated and all of a sudden realized that they had a mountain of debt, and it was related to DAR's failure to adequately provide funding for their last semester of college. So put yourself in the position of a young woman who is starting to get out there in the world. She's looking for jobs. She has no money for interview clothing.
Yeah.
She has no money for shoes on her feet to be able to walk out of the door and try to find a job, all because of a goof up with funding.
Yeah.
So we went and represented, and our client was successful at fair hearing and was able to receive a financial award that allowed her to walk out of the door in a beautiful you know, clothing and shoes that allowed her to have confidence to go and get a job.
Which is absolutely crucial. So it sounds like you guys are doing really good work, and you have sort of these ways to enforce, you know, you've got some teeth behind your advocacy sometimes, it sounds like. So when you represent people in these fair hearing situations, I mean, is that something that an attorney has to do? Is it something advocates can do?
Great question. Luckily, there are many processes with administrative processes and that advocates can complete as well as attorneys. We haven't mentioned this thus far, but Julie and I are both advocates by trade.
Right.
And so you know, luckily with the DARS and the DBVI mediation and fair hearing processes, it could be an advocate or an attorney who represents. There are many other processes, and then once we would set foot in a courtroom, as you know, we'd have to have our attorney step in. But we kind of work together and intertwine our skills to be able to take on the administrative processes and the legal proceedings together as a team.
And that allows you guys to kind of, you know, spread your resources too, I imagine.
Oh, very much
get
so.
more work done.
Absolutely.
So if somebody was qualified for vocational rehabilitation services, you know, you've mentioned some of these agencies that provide them. How do people connect with those agencies?
Sure. And hopefully folks have a pen and paper out right now or something to type into. But for VR issues, to contact the agencies, you can reach DARS through the following number. You can call 800-552-5019, or you can email at DARS, D-A-R-S, at dars.virginia.gov to get connected. They have a lot of different offices scattered around the state. So start here with their administrative office and they'll get you where you need to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and now DBVI, you can also reach them. They have many offices, so their main number to reach them to get started is 800-622-2155, or go ahead and visit www.vdbvi.org for more information. Now that's kind of the VR side of things, vocational rehabilitation. If you just have PABS issues related to some of these topics we were talking about, it could be an issue related to housing, which is a barrier to employment. Could be a work-related overpayment of Social Security benefits, things of that nature. Just give us a call, and we'll talk to you directly about it rather than resolving that that way.
Okay. So to get in touch with the agencies, call those numbers. If they're having other issues or issues with the agencies, call you guys.
Yes.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
to reach us, what you want to do is you want to call 800-552-3962 or email us at info@dlcv.org. Now, what you'll find is that we have advocates that are on duty on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8:30 to 4 p.m. to basically discuss any disability advocacy issue you have. Or just send us an email and we'll get back in touch with you. But we want to make sure that people, we have an obligation as an agency to try to resolve things at the lowest level of intervention. But we want folks to call us the minute they have a problem with any of these VR agencies, or the minute they have a problem they perceive as being related to a disability advocacy issue.
Okay. And then you can resolve it at that lower level instead of having to worry about jumping into court from the get-go, it sounds like.
Most people want to fix things,
Right.
and do the right thing. Particularly, we're serving, in most cases, Katie, a very vulnerable population. And we have to keep in mind that the resources that are available to them aren't always very plentiful. And so we want to make sure people realize that we all have to be a team together here. We promote self-advocacy as well. We'd like to think that we could follow along with someone through the multitude of issues they'll have in their life. But the reality is we don't have the resources to be case managers. So when folks come to us, we can help on an individual issue. And then, what happens next?
Right.
So it's important that people also learn self-advocacy skills along the way, so that they can navigate the rest of the things that life throws at them.
All right. Well, we are getting a little bit close to the end of our time, but I still want to talk about, you guys, you do this great work. You've talked about the work of your agency. What do you perceive as some of the biggest challenges that you face in advocating in this area?
Well, one of the big challenges is that Robert mentioned earlier is that we are the protection advocacy for the entire state of Virginia.
Right.
And he also mentioned that only 2/3 of our staff were advocates and attorneys. So we're going out and doing the advocacy work, and there's only a few of us doing it. So that's a challenge because we have limited resources and limited staff. As Robert told you, we don't cover every disability related issue that comes to our attention because we just can't. So that is a challenge in and of itself because we want to be able to do more, but we can't. We don't have the funding to do so. But one of the areas too that we have challenges in is in the metropolitan areas. A lot of times because of just being more public and things like that, people can find out about us. But in these more rural areas that are in the state of Virginia, which we all know Virginia is in certain parts is rural. And so sometimes in the places in these rural areas, people don't find out about us as easily. This last fiscal year, we operate on a fiscal year, which the federal fiscal year of October 1 through September 30th. And this last fiscal year, we did some very targeted outreach in the areas of Charlotte, Appomattox, and Southampton counties because we had, through our own studies of our own data, realized that we had not served a lot of people in those areas. So we made some specific outreach efforts in those areas to serve individuals with disabilities in those areas. And what we found was that a lot of people in those areas had never had access to our services because they'd never heard of us.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Does sound like you're doing a lot with a little, but I remember all the, road trips when I was with you guys right after I finished law school. It's a lot of traveling when you have to cover the whole state and you only have about 20 people to do it with.
Sure.
That's correct.
So Robert, what are your thoughts? What would you sort of say is some of the biggest challenges that you face?
I think the problem is, just we generally as a society sometimes need a lot of education about disability, about disability etiquette, and understanding that everyone has different needs and challenges regardless of disability or folks that don't have a disability. So the acceptance that our society and honestly, globally, we need to embrace is a daily struggle. And so what I'd ask everyone to do is, if you have an opportunity to provide education or enlightenment to individuals who may be confused or not understand a situation as it relates to a disability, step in, talk to people, ask questions. They want to tell you what you need to hear, but you have to ask.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I know that was, when I was there, a big part of it was just sort of that education. And, you had so many people call in and, like doctor's offices. Well, what do you mean I have to provide an interpreter?
Right.
What do you mean I can't charge the patient for that? And they weren't malicious. They weren't trying to be discriminatory. It was just,
lack of education.
Yeah. But disabilities, it's a part of life, and I think that's something that if people maybe don't understand at this point in their life, they may someday. It's such a big part of life. And so you guys are doing really, really important work. We have just a couple minutes left. Any more just fun stories or, great cases you guys want to share?
Well, I can share. We did a wonderful project the last couple of years with our some resources that we had, where we went to. I spoke earlier about VRP cases can start as early as age 14 and while they're still in school. Well, we went a little higher than that. We went to students who are trying to get out of school. And there's a whole plethora of information that students with disabilities need to know, and their families and their professionals who work with them, about services and supports that are out there for students with disabilities who are coming to that age 18 of majority, that age where they have to become adults and know about things that they have to do for themselves. So we put together a handbook on those resources and handouts and things like that students with disabilities, their parents, and the professionals who work with them need to know as they are what we call, quote, coming of age, close quote. And so we have those resources on our website, which is dlcv.org/students and young adults with disabilities. They're on our website, but we also have them in a hardback book format as well.
And Katie, we've got a lot of resources available to individuals related to things like our CAP program and other disability related topics and issues. So we really do encourage folks to give us a call. We try to provide those resources when we can, of course, free of charge.
All right. Well, it looks like we're out of time. You have been listening to Raising the Bar. Next week, Colleen Quinn will be discussing access to legal services with Allie Fannin from the Greater Richmond Bar Foundation and Marty Wegbright from Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. Thanks for listening in.